Here we go. Hi, welcome everyone to Small Business USA and our Ask the Expert call. And today I think we have an exciting duo with us, but I also think we have some exciting conversation. So I am so happy to have Bruce and Barbara AmEnde with us, and they're from Amende Human Resource Consulting, but that's not your website address, right? So let's put your website address in the box because it's the HR Conservator, right?
Right.
.com. So why don't we just start off by you sharing a little bit about yourself and what your business does, and then we'll get right into some meaty topics.
Okay. Well, first, thank you, Colleen, for inviting us. Very excited to be here.
Yes.
Yeah. And I actually started HRConservator.com in my business, Amende Human Resource Consulting, about 9 years ago. That was my desire to escape from the corporate world. I was head of HR, started HR departments in a couple of different places, and decided that I wanted to really have more opportunity to make decisions and have more authority than I could have in the corporate role. So I wanted to take my knowledge and share it with smaller businesses who typically do not have the bandwidth to have a dedicated HR department. So I went out and with some determination, and I'm thinking about how now Small Business USA would have been such a wonderful help 9 years ago. I'm glad you're here today to help people starting out or small businesses. And through networking, got out there and really developed some wonderful clients mostly in the state of Connecticut. So what we do is HR outsourcing, basically. And my specialty is HR generalist, which means I touch each of the different areas in HR, recruiting, onboarding, compensation, training, employee relations, benefits liaison. I used to do more benefits work than I do today because it's such a rat's nest, I'll call it. We trust the the experts to do that. And Bruce has had the corporate international exposure in the large corporation, and recently he left his quote unquote corporate day job to bring his expertise. And I'll let you speak to really what your strengths are, so that we can work more together.
I'll just go over a little my background. I was a design engineer, electrical engineer. I've managed projects, multi-million-dollar international projects. I've been in an HR role in a couple of different companies. I've also done procurement, and my last job was a global director of supply instrument and controls for a large corporation. So I've had many different roles and responsibilities, and I'm looking forward to getting more into the HR role again.
Awesome. I'm going to just get it started because I think this is an interesting conversation. We started to, even just in practice, we started a little debate yesterday. Are leaders made or born? We always know what happens when there's a bad leader, right? And we'll talk a little bit about that after, but are they made or born?
Actually, it's a combination of both. If you look at the data, I was looking at this online just to get a different perspective, and there's some sites that say a leader is made, and there's some sites that a leader is born, but really they're made. Some are made and some are born. Some people just have a natural tendency to know what to do, to lead people, to get people to follow them, and then there's others that learn as they go.
And I say too that sometimes you have to look for that spark in a person. There can be a natural spark that could be perceived as a leader, but it could also be a spark that simply says, I want to be in the spotlight. So as a business owner, right, when you're looking at determining who's going to be leading your company, you really have to step back and look for, how is somebody going to be able to step outside of themselves to make decisions for the benefit of the company and the employees versus it's all about me, that narcissistic approach, because it's that narcissistic approach that might drive a business forward financially, but trash the employees.
Yeah.
Right.
So are you saying that a leader can't be narcissistic?
Well, I think all leaders have egos. If you don't have ego, if you don't have
There has
ego,
to be some.
you're not going to be a good leader. So that's probably a given. The difference is when you're a leader, you have to bring everybody with you. You don't, and I look at it as you're successful because of people, not in spite of people.
And you'll hear some cues, right, from true leaders who are, first off, they're genuine, right? You follow them because there's something about them that gives you that trust level. But they're verbal cues too. You hear the difference. A manager or as somebody who's trying to be a leader will use I, where a leader will be wrapping everybody in, right? We. There's a difference in just the verbal cues. A manager or a wannabe leader will be demanding and dictatorial, whereas somebody who's a true leader is going to be more like a coach, right?
And a leader shares the credit and accepts the blame. So it's a really different approach to saying we're successful, we are successful, not I am successful.
I'm thinking of a business owner, and this business owner has a relatively successful business, 10, 15 employees. And he has really built his business on his passion and love for what he does. He's very, very smart, really loves what he does, but he would tell you that he's a terrible leader. But he's also built a business that has, I think he's up to 15 employees today. And I'm not going to give any more, I don't want to give any more away yet, but how does is that person a leader or is he not a leader? Can somebody be in that position and not be a leader, as is his claim to fame?
Well, he's a driver, obviously. He knows where he wants to go, and he's going to go there. The question is, when his business grows beyond 15 people, is he going to let other people lead, or is he always going to be the person in charge? And you only can be in charge to such an extent the business could get bigger than he can actually control. So he needs to be able to share the authority with other people as he's groom people as he's growing.
It's fascinating because I think his stalemate in his career is based on the fact that he is a manager. I'm sorry, he's not a manager and he's not a leader. He's really true, and he's trying to become what he needs to be so his business can reach the next level. But he'll regularly stop and say, I just don't have it in me. I can't lead this team. I'd rather go back and fix everything, every mistake that they've made when they're not looking, and work 24/7 than have to lead them more effectively into the next phase of our life. But if he doesn't do that, he's got no business to sell. He's going to really struggle to keep up as technology. You cannot keep doing the work for 15 people, have them do, the lion's share, however, but then go back and fix every mistake and not inspire them to the next level. So what would, here's a great example is, I would argue a little bit that he has natural leadership skills because people are still on board with him. And what he says, they naturally do because he's such a great guy,
Well, yeah, if he's not seeing turnover, there's a clue right there.
Yeah. But is he letting people fail? And by this, I mean monitoring what they're doing. Small mistakes are okay if you go back and say, okay, why did this happen? And make sure you talk it through with a person so they understand what not to do next time.
I would challenge that he wastes a boatload of payroll. I would say that he is wasting, his business is probably not even close to as profitable as it should be because his team is not doing what they could do.
Right. But is he letting them do what they could do?
I don't think he's inspiring them to do what he could do. And this is a regular conversation we have, but it's funny because the question is, his lack of leadership is getting in the way, but he's smart enough to know he needs to go there. So let's talk about how do you help that person? How do you help someone who's not a leader naturally, doesn't want to be a leader, just wants to run a business? Because we have a lot of people like that, right? They have this great idea. There's something they're like, I'm going to go build this webinar. I just had somebody who his speaking engagements have just flourished. I mean, he's in demand for speaking. He can't handle the people that are coming to his door asking for speaking engagements. He needs somebody, he needs to hire somebody to work for him, but he won't do it because he doesn't want to be a leader. He doesn't want to have to manage. But his business suffers from it, and he's at this crossroads. What do I do? How do you help somebody who is afraid? And I think it's fear, right? Is it fear that keeps people from going to the next step?
I think it's a little bit of fear, but also lack of planning and direction and vision. Where does he want to take it? What does he need to do to get there? And understanding what his own limitations are. And once you understand the limitations, once you understand your vision, and then you have to go out and get the right people or develop the right people to fill in the gaps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think he's so, it sounds like he's so close. If he could think about what would life be like, I mean, what is it that he really wants, right? That's the big question. What's his vision? And then if he sees himself really, running a larger company or allowing that company to maximize to be what it can be, how would his life be at that point? Then, okay, how do we get there? But it's that fear that's getting him from wanting that next step.
Yeah, it's very it's fascinating to me because I see a lot of business owners, and who is it? Is it who said the reason that many business owners fail is because they're afraid of succeeding. It's a fear of succeeding. And I think that's a great example. So let me ask you, being Amende Human Resource Consulting, right? Can you help that person? Can you step in and be that HR and help that leader who doesn't want to lead his team of 15 and hold them accountable? Or does it have to come from the leader or owner himself?
No, absolutely, we can help. That's the kind of situation when you have someone who wants to move forward. I mean, that's the key, right? That they're at the point where they're willing to accept other opinions and look towards that next step. What do I need to do? Is the attitude at that point. That's our ideal client is someone who recognizes they need help and is willing to listen and is willing to take action, right?
And the other part is we've both been in situations, I've been in a lot of situations where I've been put in charge and had to rely on people to help the group to be successful. So I can relate to people who are in a situation where they're maybe not skilled or afraid to let people take charge. I can relate to some of those situations. So I find when you sit down with somebody and you can relate the situation, say, I've been there, I've done that, this is what I did, this is the results I've gotten, you get people's attention.
And it's a support system, right? We're here to support that person so that they will be successful. We're not here to take over their business.
Right.
We're not a threat, right? Our success is if our client becomes successful.
Right. That's awesome. I want to hold on to this, knowing your limitations. I want to talk about it from a business owner's perspective in a couple minutes. But I want to go back to the leaders, are they made or born, for a minute? Because there's been a whole lot of leaders in my career. Let me say, there's been a whole lot of people in levels of position throughout my career that I have tried hopelessly to turn them into leaders and have been unable to. And they just, when they really need to inspire the team, and I think there's this piece that you're born with that something, but that made piece is not always something that you can really grab onto. Like there's this thing that makes people, like you said, that light, I think you said, Barbara, that light that makes people just kind of want to follow you and go after you. How does somebody compensate for not having that light? I don't know if I've ever figured that out in all these years.
Well, the leader is somebody who wants to be in charge and take responsibility and put themselves out there. I mean, that's what I found. And I don't know that you can turn the light bulb on. If you see somebody who says, okay, I'm going to take the responsibility, I'm going to be in charge, and whatever happens, it's my responsibility. And I'm going to lead everybody to solve whatever the problem it is. I don't know that you can train people who don't want to be in charge and don't want to take responsibility.
Well, that's the key, right? Is having that frank discussion. If somebody wants to be a leader, but they're holding back and they're hesitant, and there's cues around them, they're losing people, productivity's down, morale's down, then that frank discussion of something's not working here, right? And to be able to say, maybe this leadership role isn't really for you.
Right.
Let's find what the strengths are, because obviously a person's gotten that far because of something. And then work with what the strengths are, and then bring in the leadership in some other fashion. But not everybody can be that shining leader that they might want to be.
I have
they don't know how to be. Yeah.
This young guy comes to mind. He was a Harvard grad. He worked for me at Target. Really, really bright guy because of his credentials, because of his psychological testing. This guy, I mean, he had the ability to drive results, but he led them himself. He wasn't a leader, and he kind of moved up the corporate ladder. And all of a sudden he's sitting in this position where he's got 200 people working for him, and they won't follow him. He cannot move the masses. And I think business owners find themselves in these positions so well. They say, well, I paid them, I give them a paycheck, right? Why the heck aren't they getting what I need done? And I think to your point, sometimes we lead people right off of a cliff because we're such great leaders. And on the other hand, we really want to, but we can't seem to motivate them. What is a business owner? I think I will go back to know your limitations, but I think there's that business owner out there that's just like this young Harvard grad, right? Great skill set. But when it comes to being able to that intangible thing, he wanted to learn it. He knew that it was missing. He ended up leaving because he just realized that he couldn't lead. He gave up. He couldn't lead the team. But boy, I've never tried so hard to make somebody successful in my entire life, right? Almost harder than he was. But if you're a business owner, you don't get the option to quit, right? I mean, I guess you do.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But you can look at the cues around you, right? That's going to tell you. The people are following you because they want to follow you, or is there fear in the workplace?
So what is the number one thing that you see when you help business owners? I mean, my guess is the first call you get is oh crap, Barb, I'm in trouble. I need to hire you because I need you to solve this mess that I've had. And that mess there's probably some common threads behind those messes. What do you see?
Most of the time that I'm brought in is because there is a pain point, and it's usually finger pointing at some employee issue. And then when we dig deeper, what is the dissatisfaction with the employee who's causing this ripple effect problem through the company? And it usually bubbles up to being a lack of clarity about the role. Why is there a lack of clarity about the role? Because from top down, it wasn't spelled out clearly. So we keep working up the chain to see that root cause analysis, if you will. And then when we, kind of unfold everything on the table, that, well, people will do amazing things, as Bruce's favorite saying, if properly led and motivated. So, although I may have been brought in because of one issue, it's clearly there's a lot behind it. And I will sit with the business owner and, we'll kind of get down to brass tacks as far as what really caused this situation. And sometimes it is a situation that is not something the owner can fix from their point of view, and it's something that we have to deal with, that employee really needs to go. And then that's a different story. We'll take care of that. But
so let's talk about knowing your limitations, because these business owners, do they know their limitations?
No, probably not. I mean, who's told them that you have limitations? They've started the business, they've run the business, it's been successful. People usually tell you that you're doing a great job. You probably don't get the feedback that you need to improve in certain areas. They need the blunt feedback as to how to improve. Usually they don't get that.
But let's maybe we'll bring somebody on, ask some questions. I'm a little nervous what this person's going to show us.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say we're going to lock the seat so we can really answer some questions for some of the people who are really serious about talking about that. So we'll figure out how to, let's see.
I would say one of the, while we're waiting for questions, if you, one of the things that we do bring into play that I have found to be eye-opening for leaders of the company, when I'm brought in to help with some recruiting, for instance, we'll do some assessments. We'll use the assessment tool when the situation seems to be appropriate for that. And one case at a manufacturing firm, we needed to bring in a higher level position, and we did a job benchmarking, and we did an assessment with the president of the organization. So the president was going to be interacting with this position, the manager, of course, and then the potential candidates. And by doing the assessment tool, it really brought out core values, motivators, and that can be an eye-opener for a president or a head of an organization if they've never done something like that before. And then we can see, all right, we know in this particular job, these are the priorities of the job, and these are the values and the soft skills that we need in this job. And if we layer that with the manager's assessment and the president's assessment, then you can kind of see where they're blending together and where gaps are. Right. To finding the fit so that everybody works together. But it can be kind of blunt and eye-opening when you do those assessments, you know.
I bet. So do you end up spending more time with the leaders or more time with the team, do you think?
I go in, gosh, I float between. I really do. And I would say, Bruce, you're more with the leaders and the managers.
Right. That's where I'm more familiar.
You know, I look at some, you know, you look at leaders, and there's so many great business owners who have like risked so much to be out there. And I look at communication and how do you communicate where you're going and the vision. And this has really come up. So I'd love to kind of shift gears a little bit and talk about, we were talking about the iron umbrella, and what did you call it, Bruce, yesterday? I call it an iron umbrella with your employees when you're a leader and a manager.
And then to kind of not bring everything into the workplace. Remember we were talking about?
Yeah, you have to shield.
Shield.
More of a shield than an iron umbrella.
So I would love to switch conversations a little bit and talk about, okay, you're a business owner. You have a couple employees. Things aren't going so well. What do you tell the team? What don't you tell the team?
Well, you definitely lay out what's going on. If it's not going well, they know it's not going well. So you have to be upfront with the team. You may not tell them that, you know, I'm very close to not making payroll, and maybe that's not what you tell them, but you say, you know, we're having issues. This is what the issue is, and this is how we're going to address the issue. So you have to be very frank with the employee, but you have to be aware of what you want to tell them, what you don't want to tell them.
Be clear in your mind, and then ask where you need help.
And then ask questions. That you have to be very open with the employees to the regard of if they have questions, let them ask questions. What I do with employees, I say, I'm going to tell you what I know, what I don't know, and if I can't tell you the answer. So they know ahead of time. They could ask me a question, and because it's a corporate issue that I can't relate it, I'm going to tell them that I can't tell you the answer. I can't answer that question, but at least they know you're going to have an answer for them one way or another.
Yeah. So I think about, you know, I was telling you this story of walking into a store, and the employees are talking about how, you know, the owner hadn't paid the rent, and they're really nervous about losing their jobs, and they were going to find other jobs, and it hurt the customer experience. It was, you know, and all of a sudden you have those flashes, and I don't know if you remember Circuit City and Best Buy did this. I mean, Best Buy, here's a company that's doing great right now. They've just had this amazing turnaround, and they used to do this. Employees would just walk in 5 o'clock one morning, and the doors were shuttered up. there were pink slips being handed out at the front door, and that was it. And the theory was that if you shared with them that you were in trouble, there was going to be this one foot out the door mentality. Like my last 2 weeks, I'll tell you, my last 2 weeks to Target, it was the hardest 2 weeks I've ever spent. Right? It wasn't, you just think, and it's this painful, I think I'm going to be 1,000% there, but my mind is already somewhere else. Mm. So I don't know, is there a danger, do you think? Because I think there's a perceived danger in telling your team.
There's certainly perceived danger. You need to know what to share and what not to share, but I've seen people in situations where they know there's going to be a layoff, and they're just the character of the person is going to do whatever they need to do their job. So part of it is you have to know the character of your employees, what you can share and what you can't share. Right. Obviously, there's certain situations that if you can't make payroll, you don't want to tell the employees because you think that the employees are just not going to respond properly. So you have to make an analysis and a judgment call before you have those discussions.
Right.
You have to know your employees.
I really believe I had this great example. There was 2 little stores up in Buffalo, New York, and both stores were they were in the same mall, and they were really just struggling from a profitability perspective. They both had sales, but from a profitability perspective, they were on opposite sides of the mall. They sold the same. They were owned under the same company. I had both of them, and I pulled the teams together, and it was an amazing conversation. But I remember praying before we went and had this conversation that the outcome was going to be great, because I was scared to death. Because ultimately, when you look at that bottom line, if the sales number collectively would support one location really nicely and be profitable, but collectively they were just breaking even. And so I shared that, and amazing things happen. To your point, in the layoff situation, they worked together to close one store. They shared hours. They shared responsibilities. Some people cut hours because they didn't need the money and they just wanted to be part of the team. And we closed one of those stores in record time. The next store it actually not only absorbed the sales from the other store, but had increases that far exceeded our expectation. We ended up remodeling that store and doing some great things with it. But it is the power of a team.
It's always the power of a team, yes.
It's amazing.
And to Barb's point earlier, when you look at your team, there might be 1 or 2 people that, for whatever reason, don't buy into the team concept. So you have to make a conscious decision. Do I want to change the makeup of the team? Are those people really going to be part of my team going forward?
Right.
That's what a leader does. The leader has to make those tough decisions.
Sometimes, if I can jump in on the taking over a team or stepping into a team that is dysfunctional can be a real challenge.
Right.
I think Bruce has a good story. I like to share it if that's okay, Bruce, on the Valve group, I'll say.
Okay. I'll just share a story. When I first went back to the company I'm at now, I was in charge of the Valve group. Valve group was made up of 7 people, and this is not my words. I talked to somebody before I joined. They said the group is dysfunctional. They don't produce. They just don't interface with all the other groups. It's really chaotic. Are you sure you want to take that over? And when I looked at it, I said, well, that's an opportunity, I think, to make a difference. So I went into the group and I introduced myself to the group like I always do. And I said to this one person, second day I was there, we're going to have a group meeting. He says to me, we don't have group meetings, so we're not going to go, basically. And I said, well, you do now. You're going to have a group meeting. So went into the group meeting, and they had gotten there ahead of time, and they had their laptops open. And when I walked in, they didn't pay attention to me. And I had to set the tone, so I said, in my group meetings, there's no laptops. Put everything away, and we're going to talk about what we're going to do. And before I started my conversation, they had an unofficial leader of the group. We'll call him Jim so Jim started to start the conversation like he was in charge. And I looked at Jim and I said, I'm in charge. I'll do the talking. and this is what we're going to do. And I set the tone. I said, we are going to be the best group here, and this is how we're going to do it. We're going to outperform every other group, and that's our goal. And after the meeting, I had a conversation with Jim, and I said, I know you're a natural born leader, and you have been the unofficial leader of the group, and I need you, and I need your leadership capabilities, but you have to understand that I'm in charge. You have to follow my lead. So long story short, we outproduced all the other groups. There are 5 groups altogether. We outproduced all the other groups combined. And everybody worked together, and we created lots of different projects, and we had processes and procedures that are still used today, because I set the tone, I said what the expectations were, and everybody bought into it.
Right. You know, I think it's important to bring your team along with you. And let's, even if you're not, I look at generating winners, and that's, this pet project that we have. It's something Small Business USA funds. Love it, really proud of it. But it's 17 advisors. They're not on our payroll. They're just helping out. But with the power of bringing them on board with us and kind of sharing, they're so engaged. They want to know how many people saw the website. I mean, you get emails all the time, and it's that power of bringing people along with you that can move mountains, right? I mean,
because you genuinely want to help people. I mean, that's evident.
Well, it just comes across.
Yeah.
That you're genuine, and you have enthusiasm, and you're looking.
It's not because I wrote it on the back wall here.
Yeah.
Good motivation.
Well, we tell everybody, right? Put your vision statement. What's your vision? Where is it posted? And it is funny that I put it there without thinking. And I thought, because I have no walls in my office. These are the only 2 little walls that I have. And minus some sliding doors and stuff. But so I'm like, well, I need to post it, right? This is my job. I make everybody else do it, right? It's
Our own children, yes.
So, I put it on there, and I was like, well, that's not a good place to put it. But it actually is, because with the age of the internet, I can see it like right behind my head.
Right.
And it reminds me, we're here to help people, like help your business and your family life. Like, it's about balancing it out, right? Business owners, it's hard work. It's really, really hard work.
It is. And I think true leaders today know when to bring in support and to surround themselves with the experts. Their ego doesn't get that much in the way that they can pull in folks from Small Business USA or whoever that they need. Yeah.
Well, I think it goes back to knowing your limitations. So what would you like? I have some questions for you guys, right? I'm going to power some questions at you. But what are the limitations that you see that blindside business owners more often than not? What are the surprises that they don't see coming?
I think they don't know their weaknesses. They know their strengths, but they don't really know their weaknesses, or if they know them, they don't want to acknowledge them. And once you know your weaknesses, to Barb's point, you know what you need help with. And it's hard sometimes for business owners to say, I need help. I can't do this, or I don't know this.
Well, and I think another one I've bumped into also is sometimes business owners start the business with no employees, right? And they work themselves up to maybe 1 or 2 or 3, and they might be friends, they might be family members, but I've seen more than one occasion where the business owner maintains, I want to say, like a familial relationship where they don't really realize that nobody's going to be as invested in the business as they are. So that just because they hired 2 or 3 people doesn't mean that those people are going to have the love of the business that they have. And so they kind of treat them like family, and they don't understand that you can't be their best buddy, because sometimes hard decisions have to be made as the business owner, and you don't want to get that emotional involvement or expect that because they report to you, they're going to think the same way as you. You have to have a business hat on. That's sometimes what's missing and trips people up. They can't differentiate between being a business owner and being a best friend of their employee.
Right. I agree. Hey, Bruce, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
Let's see your face, though. Move your screen so we can see your face a little bit. Right now, you're wearing the Bruce G. Clinton mask.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Hey.
So I know Bruce Clinton is a huge fan of the Amendes.
And vice versa.
And vice versa, for sure.
Yeah.
Yay. Okay.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Good to be seen finally. This wasn't easy.
Well, you're next, Bruce. You're the next victim on the Blab school. So, oh, you have your fan out there. Scott Gumbar is cheering you on.
Thanks,
so
Scott.
we're talking about what are the biggest limitations, Bruce? What do you think? What are the biggest limitations that business owners don't see coming?
Biggest limitations that I don't see coming. Wow. Well, I think one limitation is succession planning. They never see that coming until they want out, and sometimes that's too late, or there isn't enough time to do to make succession planning.
Barbara and Bruce, I wonder, the Amende duo over there, I wonder how many times do you get hired by somebody who has incredibly high turnover and they don't think they're the problem?
Oh, yeah. In this, a few times, just a few times. And I have gone in and sat down, and again, I'm thinking of one case in particular, and said, come on, you got to tell me, really, you brought me in, you've been trying to fill this particular spot and had 4 people in less than 4 years. What's really the problem here? And then the owner sat down and said, well, it's probably me. Yeah.
That's who I always refer you to. Anytime somebody says, oh, I can't keep people, I'm like, you need to call the Amendes. Save yourself some headache. I was teaching my daughter this, when you point the finger somewhere else, you have 3 more pointing back at you.
Oh, that's a good one.
And it is true, right? If everybody's a problem, you might have to hold the mirror up.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, here's the next question. You guys ready?
Go ahead.
Feel free to weigh in on this as well. Virtual assistant or employee? We get this question all the time. Virtual assistant or employee?
Well, it depends on the situation. That's a tough one, because I've seen some really, really good virtual assistants. I've worked with them. And I've seen some business owners become frustrated with the virtual assistant. And from the virtual assistant's point of view, and this is what I've heard time and time again, is my clients, they'll say, my clients don't understand that they're not my only client. So if you're using a virtual assistant, very often they are working for other people, and that can be a challenge. I think in the beginning it could be useful if it's just some straight document work. But as a company grows, it's really hard to create a good relationship with a virtual assistant. At some point, you need to have somebody right there. It can work. I've seen both. Yeah.
Mr. Amende, do you have anything to add to that? We have 2 Bruces. I don't know. I only know 2 Bruces in my entire life.
They're
And
here.
the one that's on TV, he just changed his name, so you don't have to worry about him anymore, or her.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of experience with virtual assistants,
Okay.
so in the corporate world, we don't really use virtual assistants, so I can't really give you an opinion one way or another.
Yeah.
I've only had experience on a project basis, and I feel that when an organization gets to a certain size and income, they should bring on somebody full time.
Scott reminded me about Bruce Almighty. I know one of you can accept that moniker. What about from a cost? Is it as expensive as people think to hire an employee versus a virtual assistant? I mean, it's probably an unfair comparison but I think, I look at the virtual assistant versus somebody who knows you and knows how, you know, I remember my last assistant, and I wish I could afford to bring her with me. She knew my quirks. She knew when I was going to get frustrated. She knew how to schedule my days so I was most effective. She knew I was a waste of time between 3 and 3:30 p.m. Like for whatever reason, you know, she knew that I needed a break during that time. I mean, she just knew me so well. And it was, I didn't have to, you know, she thought ahead of me because you have that relationship, to your point, Barbara. But you know, when you look at the cost between the two, it's obviously less expensive for a virtual assistant, but are you really saving money versus somebody?
I mean, if you only need a little bit of time a month, a couple of hours per month to get a certain routine document type administrative task done, that is a good use of a virtual assistant. But if you need someone who's really going to be your assistant, you're kind of more of a personal assistant, I don't think a virtual assistant is really going to be the best way to go in the long run. Like, just to your point about the relationship that you had with the assistant that really worked well for you, that's pretty hard to do in a virtual situation. That's just my opinion. Yeah.
So, all right, next question. I love this question. What's the difference between a manager and a leader?
I'll take the first stab at that. I think you have to be both.
I love that you all laugh first.
Yeah, I think you have to be both, but you lead people and you manage things. What amounts to, and a good manager leader has to do both.
Yeah, and
yeah, I would agree with that. A leader is more prone to make the tough decisions, has to make the tough decisions. Sometimes a manager has a hard time making the really tough decisions, especially if it means a personnel decision. You just need to understand the difference.
yeah, and I think a leader will rely on the relationships, the goodwill relationships they have built with their employees, versus a manager or a boss will rely on authority. There's a difference. You know, I think we talked earlier about even the way a leader speaks in terms of bringing everyone into the fold, a we versus an I.
Mm-hmm.
And Bruce had mentioned earlier too that a leader gives credit, where a boss will sometimes take credit. You know, and a leader will accept blame, where a boss wants to point fingers and spread blame, right?
Because a leader, you are in charge and you have the responsibility. If something goes wrong, you need to step up and take that responsibility, but you are successful because of people, not in spite of people. And you need to know that as a leader.
I agree. Can you be a great leader and not be a great manager?
I don't think so, but you always have to read the dials and read information that you know, and track information and see signals that, you know, cause you to need to take action. So, and then that becomes the leadership of people. That how you take that action. So I don't think you can be one without the other.
Yeah, I would agree with that. As a manager, you need to know the level of detail. You can't always rely on your people because they may not be there. So yeah, you need to know details, but you also need to know how to manage people and lead the group. So
I think sometimes a leader will be somebody who has evolved up through the manager category. So they don't necessarily have to be taking on the tasks as much.
Thank you for using Walgreens Pharmacy.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Gonna throw this in the hallway.
Would you pick up that prescription for me, please?
You have to love live feeds, right? I was on one with Scott Gumbar, and the police, I had pulled over on this, and my timing was a little off. I pulled over on the side of under an underpass to take the call to do the blab. and 2 police detectives pulled up alongside of me and came to the window during the live broadcast.
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, so your prescription is ready. We do know
Yeah,
that.
thank you.
So, all right. I think that people can be great leaders if, going back to their limitations, if they know what a limitation, if they know their limitations, if they know that they can't manage people. And I go back to this business owner, and his challenge is the business owner in the beginning of the story that isn't a great leader is going back and doing everybody's work behind them. If he can hire a manager to manage his team and have somebody that I think some people are just so personable and have such a great spark that they can lead people anywhere, but it's they just can't manage the process. I think they have to really know their limitations. But I guess then again, I'm saying that, and as I'm saying that, there is a little level of management that comes out there, right?
And part of it is if you don't know your limitations, there's assessment tools that will allow you to see what your limitations are, and I think those are very important. And if you look at them from an honest and introspective way, it will help you manage people going forward and be a better leader. But the assessment tools, I think, are very key to understanding what your weaknesses are.
I agree with you.
Right.
I agree with you, Bruce. And I think that if you understand yourself, then you can borrow certain qualities, if you will, or behaviors to match a situation that may be uncomfortable for you, but it doesn't require, hours and hours of role play. You can borrow behavior for certain situations once you know what you need to do, right, and what your limitations are.
So let's ask, how do you hire the right people for you? I think there's always hiring the right people, some who are going to be great at what they do, but they may not be great at what they do for you in your organization. How do you make sure you hire the right person who's a great cultural fit?
Yeah.
Well, at least I'll run it. I'll give it a run. I think you have to. The most important thing is to decide what the organization needs as far as requirements for a position. So by carefully defining the position and what the different characteristics are, both the soft skills that will be necessary, which are people skills, and the hard skills, which are experience and education. Once you've defined what has to be done, then you can assess somebody or identify the candidate that you're looking for. And I think most selection systems fail because they don't spend enough time in describing the job or the position. And positions are floating. They're not static. They meet a need of the organization, and that's important whether you're a small organization or a large. Matter of fact, it's more important if you're small.
I mentioned earlier about job benchmarking, and that's really the term for what Bruce had just described. And what I found is that the companies that will take the time to go through that process, defining and then the job, and then clarifying the soft skills as well as the hard skills, and not settling just to get a body, in the long run, it saves them more money than if they just fill the job, just to get it filled.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me how many, and I'm somebody who likes to surround myself with people where I buy their skills because I know where I'm going to mess up, right? And I think you have to balance yourself out. Right. But that assessment process is probably one of the toughest things to do. I mean, I've hired thousands of employees over the years, and I've made a lot of mistakes. And I'd like to think I'm pretty good at that assessment process, but I think as a business owner, you're probably not getting to hire 10 people at a time. So how do you make sure that you're hiring the absolute right person? What are common mistakes that you guys see with the assessment process? And then maybe we'll wrap it up after this, but I know that you love this
I'll start with one. You decide on whether you're going to, if you like a candidate within the first 3 minutes of the interview.
Yes.
And and therefore everything else supports that view.
Mhm.
Is that misguiding, misleading?
Well, sure. It takes probably 30 minutes to find at least a thread of past success that's transferable to your job, and it takes at least an hour and 30 minutes or 90 minutes and a longer interview to get beyond role play.
And you know, today it's different, that there are people who have had long careers or careers in different jobs, that when interviewing someone, you have to allow the time to flush all of that out, as kind of to echo what Bruce had just said, and not taking the time really, you know, costs you. And I like to use the phrase hire slow and fire fast. If you've heard of that one. Yeah. Yeah, and part of the kind of on the bookend, the other side of that, using the assessment or really screening your candidate, is where I find employers fall short. Is, okay, they spend the time to get somebody on board, but then they don't give them the clear objectives once they get started. So they don't have the goals and objectives lined up for the onboarding. And then the new employee may or may not be a mind reader and be able to then, you know, perform. So you've gone through all this effort and then not laid out a 30, 60, 90-day plan for success.
You know, it's funny, Bruce, when you first said, you know, the first 3 minutes, I misunderstood what you were saying at first, so I apologize. But when you first said that first 3 minutes, my mind immediately went to, maybe we need to change our strategy to trying. If you really love them the first 3 minutes, spend the rest of the half hour trying to figure out why you don't like them. You know,
well, you also miss very good candidates if you make up your mind that you don't like somebody in the first 3 minutes. Some people don't interview well, but are very talented.
Yes.
And the agencies many times prep people to look perhaps at their best. You know, people are most likely the best in the selection during the interviews in the selection process. You know, that's where your evil twin walks into the job.
What I like to do,
it might be the good twin. I think I've hired the evil twin by accident.
Right.
It happens. Sometimes it happens.
what I like to do in the interview situation is I'll ask situational type questions that are relevant to the business. A lot of times we talk to the person, we get some generalities, but here's a specific situation. What would you do in this particular case to see if they would fit into the culture and kind of understand how they're going to respond under pressure. And it usually separates the people who look good, act good, but maybe not think and are proactive.
Right.
Yeah, I think that at least I've been taught that may come near the end of the interview,
Yes.
of the selection interview, when somebody is really maybe tired or less knowledgeable of what is happening,
Right.
and then you may stress them a little bit,
Right.
and true colors come out.
Yeah, that's usually a true test of the person's capabilities.
Well, I call it the Columbo moment. If you remember the Columbo TV show, the detective, right? It was always the last question as he is heading out the door. That's the real question he wanted to ask way back when.
Yeah.
Yes. So sometimes it's as we're leaving an interview or walking down the hallway. Sometimes, my corporate life, I'd be walking a candidate out through the maze of the building or whatever. And that's when I would get more of who this person really is. It wasn't that I was fishing. It's just that they would be more, more comfortable, and I'd get more sense of who they are.
I'll tell you my favorite. I have a couple things, but my favorite story is when I was having my office remodeled. And so I was the 5th interview. So people had 4 interviews before they got to me. And I would generally turn down a lot. And I would always tell it was because of that Columbo effect, I thought. Yeah. It's because by the time they got to the 5th interview, they thought they had the job. They let the guard down. It was so easy. So I had this gentleman, I'll never forget. He ran a Big Y store. But, here I am, my office is being remodeled. And so there was an empty desk in the office area of my office. So I just sat down there and I looked like the administrative assistant sitting there. I was using her computer. I was in there busy, and he sat down and he said, I said, oh, are you here for an interview? And he said, yeah, I'm meeting Colleen. I said, okay, I'll be right with you. And I never even thought to say, I'm Colleen. I just
That's too perfect. Yes. Yes.
And he goes on and on with these stories about how nobody gets away with things on his watch, and he doesn't take shit from anyone, and he's going on and on, and he sings himself. I mean, I just let him talk, and I'm at the computer just trying to finish up an email so I can go with him, and I can't even type because the things coming out of his mouth are so incredulous. Yeah. And I'm like, So I finished my email. I said, I'm so sorry. I just had to get that email out. Okay, we can go in the back now. And we walk into this conference room, and I said, it's so nice to meet you. I'm Colleen Ferrary. And his face, like blood, just strained out. He goes, I guess this interview is not going to go very well.
He said, thank you very much, right? Saved us all a lot of time.
The world's shortest interview. It was unbelievable. I had another example, and I think on the job, and you look at Pret Manger, is that what they call Pret-A-Manger? Have you heard of that business model? So they're like little sandwich shops. They're in New York City. It's a chain. It's kind of rapidly spreading. But they actually come in, and they have that you go through the interview process with their management team, and then you have to go and work a 4-hour shift, and then your coworkers vote you on or off the shift. That's the interview process. Wow. So I'm assuming they have to, I don't know, you can tell me, do they have to, before we send this out to the universe, they have to pay them, I'm assuming, for that interview. If it's 4 hours, or do they have to do that?
Not necessarily. If it's an interview, I've seen companies do that kind of like a job shadow, just come in. It's a voluntary thing.
Right.
And not paid. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I think seeing somebody in their real life environment is valuable. We had this young man, and he walked into my office, and as he was walking in, one of the managers that happened to be there said, oh, I'm coming. Can I sit in on this interview with you? I'm like, wow, this is the oddest thing I've ever heard. But, I trusted her, and I was like, of course, come on in. And so we start this interview with this young man, and she said, you work at Big Y another Big Y, as a matter of fact, you work in Big Y in Enfield or something. And the guy, he's all like, he goes, well, yes, I do. Because I was there last week. Do you remember me? And I was like, oh
boy.
What did you do?
This poor kid. I mean, honest to God, he was probably late 20s. And this poor kid, honestly, he turned like the brightest shade of red I've ever seen. He started sweating. I mean, I didn't say anything. This, one of my managers just kind of took over asking him about this experience. And would you like to tell Colleen about, I'd love to share this customer service experience because it was horrible, and
what's the point?
Oh, it was awful. And this poor kid, his face just turned all red. And I said, gosh, do you want like water, or let's open the door? Is it too hot in here? And so she ended up leaving to go get him a glass of water. And he got so choked up and so embarrassed that he couldn't even talk. I mean, it was really awful. I thought I was going to have to call an ambulance or something. It was really this horrible experience. But I think it goes to show, like the evil twin that you were just saying, that person, you get the best version of who that person is, right, in the interview process.
That's why I mentioned earlier about having that onboarding afterwards, and the goals and the objectives, and being on track with that new hire, so that if that evil twin comes out, we catch it soon, either redirect it or move them on out and save money. Yeah.
All right. So I want to wrap up. I can't believe it's been an hour already. And so let's tell everybody how they can reach the two of you. So Bruce and Barbara, you want to share? And I know you guys work together. The Clintons and Amendes are great partners. So let's, we'll introduce you both. But Barbara and Bruce, if you guys could just introduce yourself and tell everybody who you are again and how to reach you, that would be great.
Sure. Barbara AmEnde. I can be reached at amende@hrconservator.com, and certainly can go to the website hrconservator.com.
And Bruce AmEnde, and I can be reached at hrconservator.com also.
Or Bruce at HR.
Bruce at hrconservator.com.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Thank you so much for being on this call with us. Bruce Clinton, tell everybody how to get a hold of you.
Hi. Okay, I will. Bruce B. Clinton at business-wise.com is the email, and business-wise is the website, www.business-wise.com.
All right. Thanks for joining us. And, lots of great thoughts about, looking at yourself as a leader. And if you're really, are you the CEO? There's been moments with members that I've stopped them dead in their tracks and say, you're not acting like a CEO. You are the CEO of your company. Whether it's just you or you have 10 people or you have 100 people, you're the CEO of your company. And putting that hat on is the most important thing you can credit. He said that to me a couple times. So it's really easy to have, get lost in the trees as a business owner in the forest.
Well, thanks for inviting us, and for all that Small Business USA does as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you for being a part of it. I'm going to